And welcome everybody to another episode of Developer Shoutout right here at AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. and I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
If you didn't get your fill of fighting with UFC Fight Night in Bangor, Maine last weekend, good news, everyone! There are 2 UFC shows on Saturday.
Yeah, we got a twofer, ladies and gentlemen. The first one is in Macau, China, and then on Saturday night we go to Tulsa, Oklahoma to see Henderson and Dos Anjos in the main event. So you're going to get up early, take a nap, and watch more UFC.
Well, you probably could sleep through the prelims of the Macau show, but wake up in time to watch the main event, Michael Bisping and Cung.
And we do have a lot of news to get through this week as well. There was some big news yesterday, something we talked about on this very show. And I'll admit to you, Stevie, when I heard this news, I cursed your name saying I effing told him this would happen. Eddie Alvarez is now a member of the UFC.
Well, this has been a long time coming. He's wanted to go to UFC for at least 2 years now. We've actually talked to Dana White about it at press conferences that I've attended, and every time it's been, well, Bjorn Rebney's a dick, Spike TV this, blah, blah, blah. He always gets pissed off and rants about it, and it was always some legal reason that they wanted Eddie Alvarez, but they couldn't bring him in. Well, Bellator finally cleared that hurdle yesterday because they sent out a press release saying, we've given Eddie Alvarez an unconditional release effective immediately. And then Scott Coker made a statement, this has gone on long enough. He's a great fighter, and we wish him nothing but the best in the future. And within hours of that, literally like a couple hours after Bellator sent out this press release, it came out that Eddie Alvarez had signed with the UFC and had an opponent for UFC 178, and that opponent was the Cowboy, Donald Cerrone.
Now, it's been a running joke over the last, I'll say 2 months with you, Stevie. Whenever big news happens in UFC or mixed martial arts in general, you're always at the gym.
Yeah, you have this incredible sense of timing that whenever I actually think I can quit working, nothing in news is breaking, I can go to the gym and work out for a while, you send me a text message and I come back to my locker, I put my bag in there, I check my messages, fuck, not again.
You're like, was it Alvarez? Yes. Is he signed with UFC? Yes. Have won an opponent? Yes.
Well, I knew about the Alvarez part because I had printed the Bellator press release. I just didn't realize UFC would move that fast to get him once he was released.
See, in my opinion, I think, Alvarez bullied Bellator in the sense that with the new regime of Scott Coker, he's saying basically, I know I've got one fight left, but after that I'm done. I have no interest in staying with Bellator. So Coker was like, well, we can make him fight against his will and fight Chandler or the interim champion, or we can just cut our losses and give him his unconditional release.
I think Coker realized that whatever was going on before he was there with Eddie Alvarez wasn't to his benefit and wasn't to Eddie's benefit, and just decided, we need a clean slate here, let's let this guy go and start fresh.
Now, with this new fight with Cerrone and Alvarez, it really, it helps the buy rate immensely for UFC 178. And Bobby Green, I think, is left in the dark right now.
Yeah, he's got a new opponent yet to be determined. Who knows what they're going to do for him, but he is kind of getting the shaft here because he was fighting the number 5 ranked guy in the lightweight division. It was a very good shot for him to get a future title shot, but now he's been trumped because obviously fighting what many people consider the consensus lightweight, like if you look at the list, there's like Henderson, Melendez, Thompson, and Alvarez. And Alvarez was the only guy not in the UFC, and now he is. So, of course, they're going to give him a huge fight right out of the bat. You're going to take number 5 Donald Cerrone and say, if you beat this guy, you deserve a title shot, and if he beats you, he probably does.
Now, you're on the rankings panel, so this is a very fair question. What do you rank Alvarez in that division?
Well, let's find out when he faces Donald Cerrone, because if he beats him, he's clearly a top 5 guy. But, of course, we have Henderson and Dos Anjos this weekend, so we can't look past that. We got to see what happens there first.
So it's a time will tell scenario. I mean, even if Alvarez loses, he lost to a top 5 guy.
Right. I mean, he'd probably still end up in the top 10 no matter what, but we can't rank him until he's at a fight, so it's kind of a moot point.
Yeah, for now. All right. Well, I'm really looking forward to that one. Now, UFC 178 in general, the main card is so stacked. The main event of the prelims is now Dominic Cruz and Taki Mizugaki.
I have to say something before we go on.
What's that?
It occurs to me that with two UFC cards to rank this weekend, they may add Eddie Alvarez to the ranking system just to see where we'll put him. Even though he hasn't fought, they may put him in there as a fighter you can select. So I may have spoken prematurely.
It's a fair point, but
So we may actually be able to rank him. I don't know. We'll have to find out after Saturday's fights.
the new prelim card, I mean, this obviously is subject to change because you never know what happens. An injury might happen here or there. The prelim card now has Dominic Cruz, Jorge Masvidal, Patrick Cote, and Brian Ebersol as a prelims.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
And the first fight on the Fight Pass, the very first fight of the night, has Manny Gamburian.
Well, Manny Gamburian's kind of dropped to that level.
Yeah, sad to say. He's fighting Cody Gibson, and the other Fight Pass fight is Kevin Lee and John Tuck.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's a pretty stacked card. I made a prediction a few weeks ago. Obviously, it's changed now because the original main event for this show was this the one with Cormier and Jones, right?
Yes.
That I said would do 1 million buys after the incident, which we've talked about week after week. So I don't think we'll see 1 million buys here, but the Alvarez Cerrone fight, I would say, if it's promoted properly, I would say anywhere between 3 and 350.
They do need a countdown special and some good hype videos explaining that Eddie Alvarez was the best lightweight, not in UFC. He's now going against a guy who's won 4 fights in a row, who's on the verge of a title shot. They need to really hammer this home that this is a dream fight that fans have never been able to see before. Now, for the first time ever, they get to see Eddie Alvarez in the UFC. They really need to do a good hype special for those who don't know his Bellator reputation. And let me make it clear for anybody who is listening to this right now who never watched any of his fights in Bellator, who never saw the 2 Michael Chandler versus Eddie Alvarez fights, you've been missing out. Eddie Alvarez is truly something special.
So what's your prediction right now? If you had to put money out, what's the buy rate?
It's too hard to say because with the main event of Demetrius Johnson and Chris Carriasso, it's not going to be super big. If they do a good job of selling the undercard and all the matches underneath it, it could do anywhere from 2 to 3. But if they don't and they focus just on the title fight, it's going to be like when he fought Ali Vagotinov.
I think with Tim Kennedy on the card, you could do a soldier, like a profile of a soldier coming, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the American hero, A Soldier's Journey, that kind of thing.
Conor McGregor sells himself.
Well, that's true. There is some appeal to Conor McGregor being on the card, so I won't say that doesn't draw some buys, but that's what I'm saying is usually it's the main event that you sell a pay-per-view with, and on this one, and I mean no disrespect to either of the guys in the main event, but they really need to sell this undercard hard.
Even the first fight on pay-per-view, Nunes and Zingano, that could be a really good fight.
Yes, but do either of those names mean buys? Are people buying a pay-per-view to see Cat Zingano? Probably not.
So the hardcores, yes.
But the hardcore has proven to be about 90,000 to 100,000 people.
That's a fair assessment, yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. If you want anywhere from 2 to 3, you better really sell the hell out of the rest of these fights.
All right, well, we should move on to what happened this past weekend in Bangor, Maine. What was the old joke? No, nothing ever happens in Bangor, Maine. You just drive through it.
Yeah, I don't know. I assume that Bangor is a lot cooler than I would think because I've never been there, so I don't know anything about it.
Well, we had a great main event. Ryan Bader and OSP.
Define great. Please define greatness.
Well, I thought this was OSP's time to shine. I thought he was biting a little bit more than he could chew.
I think
It,
that was true after the 10th takedown. He'd bitten off more than he could chew.
yeah, I got kind of in that John Fitch territory where it's just takedown after takedown after takedown. I mean, Ben Askren on line one, but it's one of those things where Bader proved himself to be an elite wrestler. And that's basically it. I think this fight, and I hate to say this, cemented Bader as a gatekeeper.
I've seen several editorials that imply the same thing, so you're not that far off the mark. But let's do say this. If you think you're going to be an elite light heavyweight and you can't stop the takedowns of a guy like Ryan Bader, then you're not going to stop a guy like John Jones either. So if he's a gatekeeper, he's a worthy gatekeeper because you have to be able to have takedown defense to win a light heavyweight match in the top 10.
If you have an effective takedown defense, you can beat Ryan Bader.
If you do. And if you don't, you're just going to get picked up, thrown high in the air, and slammed down as hard as you can. Because I will give Ryan Bader this. The fight got a little repetitive by the 5th round, but some of those slams were awfully good.
Now, the final was 48, 49, 49 46, 49 46, and one judge for some reason had 48-47.
I think that judge must have been swayed by the 5th round because that was the first point where Bader finally started to look a little tired and OSB landed a few more shots. I think that 5th round is the swing round for that third judge, but other than that, the only round that you could give OSP was the second.
The rest of the main card, Stevie.
Pretty damn good.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you like decisions, you're watching the prelims, you're watching the main card, you had a hell of a card.
Yeah, I mean, knockouts, finishes, everything you could want.
Now, only problem is Ross Pearson, Gray Maynard didn't last too long with Pearson winning via TKO at the 135 mark of the second round, and there is speculation from, I believe, Dana White. He had a conversation with Gray Maynard after the fight.
Yeah, I think Gray Maynard feels that his window of opportunity has now come and gone because if he can't beat a guy like Ross Pearson, he's probably not getting his way back up to a title shot. And after those great title fights that he had, they didn't do the spectacular buy rates, but you talked about hardcore fans earlier, and hardcore fans who saw the Frankie Edgar-Gray Maynard fights will know those were classics.
Now, the thing is, we talk about how stacked the lightweight division is. I mean, Maynard's a great fighter, but there are so many good lightweight fighters right now.
Right, and that's where I say the writing's on the wall for him is like, if he's not beating Ross Pearson, then he's probably not getting his way back up to a title shot, and he knows it. So he may just see that his time is done and it's time to do something else. Be a coach, be a trainer, do something.
Tim Boach beating Brad Tavares, TKO, second round, 3 minutes, 18 seconds.
And what do you know? I talked about Tim Bosch making the miracle comeback, and lo and behold, in this fight, he had the Yushin Okami miracle comeback. Tavares soundly beat him in that first round, and then all of a sudden, he turned the tables, he landed the perfect punch, and just the place blew off because Bosch is from Maine, so this was the hometown babyface making the comeback, and they loved it.
They did, they sure did, and Tim Boach puts himself right back in there, and I don't know who you put in the cage with him next, but
Well, it's got to be a pretty good fight because Tavares was on, the verge of being a top 15 guy and being a top ranked fighter if he beat Tim Bosch. So now Tim Bosch has to be given a guy in the top 10.
Now, speaking of top 10, I want to go back to the Ross Pearson Gray Maynard fight just for a second. When Pearson was asked, who do you want to fight next? And I put this on Twitter if you didn't see it, at Hardcore CDN. If they ask you after a win who you want to fight, say anybody. Don't be like, I'll fight someone in the top 10. No, they're trying to book the next fight, you idiot.
Yeah, give Joe Silva an excuse. Like, pick a guy, even if it's not the guy you're going to get, at least give him something to think about.
Like, make it wacky. Say, I want to fight Killer Kev and make Diaz the referee. I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Or just like everybody seems to want to do with Conor McGregor right now. I want to fight him because he's a loudmouth and I want to shut him up. You know, whatever. Even if you're ranked above him, if you say that, people will want to see that fight.
Yeah, say someone, anyone, please. It makes for a lot better interview time. If you're lucky enough to have an interview, make the most of it.
Hell, the reason Daniel Cormier and John Jones is a big deal is that Cormier was calling him out when he was still a heavyweight.
What about GSP begging for the title shot?
Yeah, you once in a blue moon you can say, I just want to fight the champion. I don't care who it is, and you can get away with that. But you got to be a GSP level guy and say, please give me a title shot, please. You got to be somebody with that much charisma.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just move on. Alan Dragoin against Seth Baczynski.
The male model beat the Polish Pistola.
He knocked him out.
Yeah, and very convincingly, too. This was a hell of a finish.
4:23 the first round.
I know that he's getting closer and closer to being a 500 fighter. You know, it's like 19-12 now after this last fight, but I don't think I remember any time where I've seen Seth Baczynski just get absolutely creamed to that degree.
Now, do you think he, with another loss in his next fight, does he get cut?
He is 1 in his last 5, so he's on the verge there.
All right. Well, speaking of being on the verge, boy, Sean Jordan definitely not on the verge. He knocked out Jack May in the third round, 203, and I wonder what happens with Jordan now, because he's a very talented fighter, and depending on who they put in front of him next, it could be a situation sort of like the OSP fight, where his next fight may be more than he can chew.
This almost was more than he could chew. I mean, Jack May was almost a foot taller than him and was definitely outgunning him on the feet. So what happened was that eventually he just wore him out by physically being the right size to take him down. He said in the post-fight interview, my head was at his knees, so why wouldn't I take him down? It's right there. And once he took him down, he was able to pound on him. But while they were standing, Jack May was hurting him pretty good.
But how many fighters in the heavyweight division are 6'7" besides the skyscraper?
Yeah, there are not many guys that tall. There's like 1 or 2 that are that tall at heavyweight.
Like, who would you have Jordan fight next?
A guy that's not 6'8". give him somebody a little closer to his height.
Yeah, no, I could see that. It's just when it comes to heavyweights, it's a really mixed bag. It's not like the murderer's row in other divisions. I mean, there's a lot of potential for movement up and down. With Jordan, you could give him, Arlovsky. You can give him Nelson. Even Gonzaga, if he likes the big guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's people out there for him. He's one of those fighters that he's gonna be on the bubble until he beats a guy that's a big name. And Jack May was a big guy, but he wasn't a big name.
Maybe it's a bigger fight than should happen, but maybe Frank Mir.
Well, Frank Mir might be done. I don't even know if Frank Mir should be fighting again at this point.
He's ranked number 10 still, so.
Yeah, well, he's hanging on because of his history and because he's a former multi-time champion, but there's definitely better days that have been seen in his career.
Well, let's wrap up the main card on Fox Sports 1 with Thiago Tavares beating Robbie Peralta with a rear naked choke, 4:27 the first round. It was like one of those situations where the choke went in and it's like, you ain't going anywhere, buddy. You have to tap. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't pass out.
Right. It was pretty vicious. It was a very decisive finish, and show why Tavares is not a guy to be messed with on the ground. Nobody should willingly go to the ground with him.
Now, any thoughts on the prelims, the 4 fights that happened there on Fox Sports 2?
Pretty forgettable on the whole, except maybe the women's bout.
Yeah, that was the only one that was not a unanimous decision. It was a split decision for McMahon.
The thing that's really memorable about it is that Lauren Murphy was throwing so many strikes on the ground. And they weren't all necessarily effective, but she was one of the busiest grounded opponents you'll ever see.
The problem with this fight, and I'm not sure if you agree or disagree, McMahon played the judges to win.
Yeah, she used the fact that she was on top and that she looked like the dominant fighter being on top of Murphy to sway them in her favor. And then by the third round, she figured she had it in the bag.
Yeah. I hate it when fighters think, well, I got 2 rounds to nothing. I can give 85% instead of 100%. I'm still going to win if I just take him down and hold him down.
Right, and that was how Lauren Murphy almost pulled this off because at least some of those judges thought she was the more active fighter, even though she was on her back. As rare as that is, at least one of them actually thought that, and then that third round was a swing round.
Yeah, absolutely. One final note on the prelims, Tom Watson beating Sam Alvey in Alvey's UFC debut. It was kind of cool to see.
Well, not technically. He was on the Ultimate Fighter. His debut in a non-Ultimate Fighter bout.
Well, the Ultimate Fighter House is an amateur classification, right?
You would think so, but then they've been known to count those fights on a fighter's record when they announce them. Like, they don't count. Like, Manville the Anvil Gamburian is a perfect example of that. Your fights on Ultimate Fighter don't count in your official record until you come out for a fight in the octagon, and then they tack those on.
Well, Sam Alvey's corner person was his wife or girlfriend or fiance, something like that. I think it was his wife. And she is the former, was it America's Next Top Model winner?
Yes.
And it's kind of cool seeing a woman being a corner person. You don't really see that. And it was like, and she was giving great advice. I was like, all right. I thought, like she was just going to, give him the water, not really input much, but.
No, McKee Sullivan's not an idiot. She knows the sport. She's been cornering him for a while.
Yeah, no, I know that, but it's the first time you see that. I mean, I can't remember last time we saw that in UFC, though.
I would suspect that's probably how they forged a relationship to begin with. It wasn't just he was on TV and she was on TV, so let's get these reality stars together. I'm sure at some point they were like, wow, you know a lot about mixed martial arts. Hey, so do you. Cool, let's date.
There you go. So that was the show. The attendance was just over 5,000 at 53.29. The gate was 321,470. The fight of the night was Juvan and Basinski, and performance of the night went to Thiago Tavares and Tim Boetsch.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that Basinski gets his second fight of the night bonus for his second straight loss.
Yeah, wow.
Yes, that's not the way you want to accumulate bonuses. I mean, it'll be great if he gets cut that he has all this extra money, but still.
What was that one fighter I read a couple days ago? I'm just skipping ahead right now. There was a fighter in the Ireland show from The Ultimate Fighter. His first fight, he wins fight of the night for losing, gets popped for drugs, a steroid. He gets the $50,000. He has to forfeit that to the UFC. It's given to the winner of the fight. And he also got cut by the UFC. So he got a 2-for-1 for steroids.
Right. I think you're talking about Mike King.
Yeah. And his opponent
was Catal Pendred.
Pendred, what he did was the extra $50,000 he gave to charity.
Yeah, which makes a huge baby face out of him.
Absolutely. So don't do drugs.
Or don't get caught, as Chael Sonnen found out.
Don't do drugs. Let's just say that.
Well, I always like to say what Brian Alvarez says about it. It's an IQ test, and people who fail the IQ test probably deserve to be cut.
Well, I don't know. I think Johnny Manziel is number one. I don't know.
Well, Johnny Manziel doesn't have an IQ test problem. He has a middle finger problem.
Well, he could be saying he's number 1 or number 11 if it's a double bird, so whatever.
No, he was saying, screw you for talking smack to me. Here's my response. That's all that middle finger was.
Yeah. I was listening to, what was it? The Lucha Brothers show there on Super Friends. And they're talking about the Mountie, about the greatness of Rougeau, right? I looked that up on YouTube, and I found the clip. It's the first middle finger in the WWE when he's getting fingerprinted at the jailhouse. And he goes, "You want the finger? Here's the finger!"
Yeah, but they probably censored it back in those days.
Oh, no! I can send you the clip. It's not censored.
Really? That's cool. Okay, I like Chakra Show. If they actually did that, if they let that go uncensored, that's great.
This is the first middle finger, I think, in WWE. I was thinking, oh, it has to be the first one.
I
Because,
honestly thought it would have been so cold. I didn't think they allowed that until him. And then even then, they eventually did censor it. They didn't let him keep doing that forever.
oh, no. But, yeah, they don't blur the finger on the clip I saw, so.
I mean, even in those Guardians of the Galaxy commercials, when Star Lord is giving the finger to the cops, they blur it out in that.
Ugh. Really?
Yeah, they do. Like, he's got the fishing reel hand and he's unreeling the finger, and they blur it out in the commercial.
It's a great movie. Everybody go check that out.
Yeah, Batista is fucking awesome in it.
Yeah. Speaking of awesome, let's go to Macau, China for the second time the UFC goes there for a show at the Cotai Arena.
Prelims start at 5:30 a.m. Eastern. You have all been warned.
Really, have fun with that. Uh,
That is very debatable if I'm getting up for that. I have a deal right now with Josh Nason that I'll cover the main card live starting at 9 in the morning, but I may actually watch the prelims afterward. That is yet to be decided. But look for my coverage on WrestlingObserver.com this weekend. And, of course, follow me on Twitter. Since Peter gave his handle, I'll give mine at AngryMarks. That's where you'll get all your updates if you don't have Fight Pass.
well, it's exclusive to Fight Pass. It won't be on Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2, whatever.
Which is why I'm saying you either need to go to WrestlingObserver.com for not $9.99 a month. It's a little more than that. Or you can just follow me on Twitter.
There is one thing on the main card here. It's the opening fight on the main card, and that is the featherweight final for the Ultimate Fighter China.
Yeah. I wish... normally I'm the one who chastises you for pronouncing names, but I wish I knew the correct way to pronounce either of these names. I'm just going to take a stab at it. Ning Shangwo versus Yang Jingpeng.
Sure.
That's my best guess.
Sure. I haven't seen a single episode, so I can't comment on this fight. Have you?
I don't even know if those are on Fight Pass. I'd have to look and see if Tough China's on there, and if it is, it better have subtitles.
The other fight, the second fight, is a lightweight contest with Zhang Lepeng against Brandon O'Reilly. I know Lepeng. I think he'll win that fight. O'Reilly, I think, is a sacrificial lamb on this fight.
Yeah, they probably want the hometown pop for a guy that's going to win, so I imagine that's the role Brendan O'Reilly has been placed in here. But guys that are put in that role can be a spoiler at any time.
The co-main event is Dunham Kim against Tyrone Woodley, which, wow, that's a hell of a fight.
Yeah, from St. Louis all the way to Macau. It's arguably the biggest fight of T. Wood's career.
And the main event is Michael Bisping and Cung Lee, which I think Bisping will win this easily, and I hate saying that because I really like Cung Lee, but I think Bisping has this one.
It's not that clear cut to me because we haven't seen Cung Lee fight since 2012. So to me, it's like, what Cung Lee shows up? Is it the one who knocked out Rich Franklin? Is it the one who did that spectacular spinning back kick to Scott Smith? I mean, is it the one who beat Frank Shamrock? We don't know. Is this the Cung Lee that lost to Scott Smith and lost to Vanderlei Silva, or is this the one that beat former champions like Rich Franklin? We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. We just don't know, and I don't want to say Jekyll and Hyde, but it's one of those things where I think the hometown crowd might encourage him to try a little harder, but Bisping is out to prove himself that he's now washed up.
Well, he's got some problems here because he's lost 3 of his last 5 fights, and if he loses this one too, he's gonna have to take a serious reevaluation of his career. I kind of thought after the Tim Kennedy fight that he might just want to retire, but he's got some fire left in the tank. He's not given up yet.
Well, I think with him, when you hear the doctor say detached retina, that might make you step back a little bit.
Yeah, I thought so too. I really thought, Bisping, he's going to go down in history as the greatest also ran of all time because every time he was on the verge of getting a title shot, not even getting to fight for the title, but getting the number one contendership, he always came up short. And Bisping will go down in history as the greatest guy who never made it.
Well, yeah. Well, I do want to make one mention of one of the prelim fights. It has Roland Delorme fighting in it, and if you remember him, he was on Ultimate Fighter, and that was the season of Bisping and Miller.
Yeah, so it's a good full circle coincidence for him to be on this card as well.
Funny thing is, he was the last pick for Team Miller. So, on that season, I remember that season, Miller was just being wacky and Bisping was trying to be all serious. For someone who got picked last for one of the team's Ultimate Fighter, he did pretty well for himself.
Mm-hmm.
But
He didn't make it to the semifinals, but the interesting thing about that is the guy he lost to is the current bantamweight champion, T.J. Dillashaw.
exactly. So, I was watching the commercial for Dillashaw and Barao coming up, and my wife walked by and she goes, "Oh, I know that guy. And, yeah, he's a new champion. He won? Yeah." He dominated the fight. Like, they did a great job with the commercial saying how Barao was, like, Ariel Hawani even saying in the commercial that, Barao will still be the champion after this fight. And we all know what happened. Like, this is going to be a great fight.
My tagline from the commercial that I stick with that I remember is never trust the odds.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can't... I'm trying to find the right words to say here. I think Barao is going to give him a lot more respect in this next fight. And I know we're jumping ahead, but I think when it comes to Barao and Dillashaw, Barao is going to basically train a little bit harder. He wants that fight. He wants that title back. He wants that to basically correct the... He wants to take that blemish off his record, so to speak. Mm. And, Dillashaw is like, bring it. Like, I beat you before, I can do it again. He's got that confidence, he's got that swagger.
Right, and Dillashaw, if you think that Barao is going to trade harder, Dillashaw is going to trade even harder than that because he doesn't want to be known as the guy who beat Barao on a fluke and then lost it right back to him. He's going to go in there to prove himself like, this was no mistake. It's going to be like Frankie Edgar and BJ Penn. It's going to be like, I didn't just beat you for the title. I beat you, and I don't care what anybody else says. I'll do it again.
Yeah, so... But that being said, with both guys basically going for broke in this next fight, for the hardcore fans, it's going to be epic.
Yeah. Again, this is debatable whether it's a huge pay-per-view outside of those hardcore fans, but for guys like you and I, the Dillashaw-Barao 2 fight is going to be pretty sweet.
Exactly. Speaking of sweet, let's move on to the next fight. The next show, on Saturday night.
From Tulsa, Oklahoma, at the BOK Center.
It's the Bach Center or BOK?
I think it's BOK. I don't think it's pronounced Bach. Because it's short for Bank of Oklahoma, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. Yes, it is. I'm just looking up the arena here. They're home of the Tulsa Shock, the Tulsa Talons, and the Tulsa Oilers.
Mm. Yeah, pretty much every minor league sports franchise in Tulsa is all housed there.
Absolutely. Main event, Rafael dos Anjos against Smooth Ben Henderson in the main event. Speaking of lightweights, man, that's going to be a great fight.
Mm-hmm. And it's a very important fight for both guys because right now Dos Anjos is... He's got all the wins he would need to make a case for himself. He's beaten Donald Cerrone. He's beaten Anna Dunham. He's beaten Mark Bocek, who we just talked about last week. So he's right there on the cusp, except for that loss to Habib Nurmagomedov. That one's going to haunt him for a while. And the TKO of Jason High was a nice comeback, but if he really wants to take it all the way back up to getting a title shot again, he needs to beat Benson Henderson. And Henderson, he really doesn't have anything to prove, and yet he does. It's the ultimate irony that you win fights, and yet people still doubt you. But the problem is that Benson Henderson wins fights by decision. He wins fights that are close. He wins fights that people think he lost on the scorecards. And it's not his fault. He says it himself. I don't care how I win, just as long as I get the W. So you can't blame Benson Henderson. You can blame the judges if you want, but then Dana White always says it, and you always say it at the end of every show. Never leave it to the judges. If you go to a decision with Benson Henderson, you might as well assume you're going to lose.
Yeah. It's, we always say this fight is going to be a slobber knock or this one's fight of the night. With Henderson, he's got that fighting style where it's very entertaining. For the casual fan, this is going to be a fight they want to see. And the fact that it's on, the fact that it's on Fox Sports 1 means the casual fan will see it as opposed to being on pay-per-view. So this might actually be a bump in the ratings for a UFC show because Henderson's on it.
Yeah, I mean, he is a popular guy. He's well-liked. A very personable guy. If you have a chance to interview him at some time, Peter, you're going to enjoy the heck out of it because he'll answer any question. He's a very charming fellow.
Absolutely. What about the next fight, Mike Pyle and Jordan Mein?
Well, I've got to assume you're excited about this one because you're a big Jordan Mein fan.
Yep, absolutely. He's one of those fighters I'm very excited to see, and Mike Pyle is a good name to fight. I mean, if he can beat Pyle, wow, that says something right there.
Yeah, Pyle is a super tough fighter. He's only lost 2 of his last 7 or 8 fights, and it was the 2 guys he lost to were Rory McDonald and Matt Brown. So that tells you the level Mike Pyle's at. Only the best fighters in the world are beating him.
I will say this: if Mein wins this fight, he is ranked.
You know what? If Quicksand Pyle is the winner in this fight, he should move up from number 12. He should be a lot higher than that.
Actually, he's 13 right now.
Okay, sorry. Well, maybe he's number 12 in mine. Whatever the case.
Well, the only movement in welterweight right now, Ellenberger was up 1-7, Maya down to 8, Saffiedine up to 9, and Donger down to 10. Is the only real movement. So I think with Mein, I think, he wins here. He's ranked maybe 12, 13, 14, whatever, depending on his performance, of course. But I mean, the thing about Mein is that he's only 24. He's only 24. That is scary.
Yeah, and we talk about guys that are only beaten by the best. It's the same thing with Jordan Mein. Tyrone Woodley and Matt Brown are the only 2 guys in recent memory that he's lost to.
Yeah. I mean, you learn more from oftentimes, and the losses he suffered, he learned a lot. So,
And before that, he was beating guys like Cyborg Santos and Maria Saromskis and Forrest Patz. All names, well-known names in the sport.
Absolutely. What about Francis Carmon against Teos Ledis?
I think that's Tales, but Tales Ledis, but. Either way, speaking of guys that are ranked, he's a top 15 in the middleweight himself. So for this to work out well, it's one of these guys is going to lose their ranking is pretty much the way it's going to go. It's like, you put Francis Carmon, who's in the top 10, against Talis Ladies, who's hanging around in the top 15. But he's got a better chance right now because of the fact that Carmon has not had things go his way lately. He's lost 2 straight decisions, and sometimes that gets in a fighter's head. I mean, even if you didn't get knocked out or finished, if you come up short in consecutive fights, it can start to erode your confidence. And if Talis Ladies wants to take advantage of that, the time is now.
Now, in your opinion, what's more of a murderer's row, middleweight or light heavyweight?
That's a toss-up, because honestly, they're both. I mean, you name one weight class right now that's really not that stacked. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, from bantamweight all the way up, every weight class is going to be just absolute killers in the top 5, top 10.
Well,
you disagree?
I disagree with some of them. I think some are stronger than others, but as far as the top murderer's row comparison, middleweight and light heavyweight, those are in my opinion, the 2 toughest divisions to move up in the rank.
Actually, if you want to talk about tough to move up, you might as well talk about flyweight, because the same 4 guys are going to sit on the top of that division forever. It's going to be Joseph Benavidez, Ian McCall, Demetrius Johnson. You're always going to have those same guys right at the top.
What about the women's bantamweight?
Well, nobody's getting past Ronda Rousey, but underneath her, there's a lot of room for movement.
Wow, I mean, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, Zagano 1, Tate McMahon 3, Davis 4, and Coffin 5, and Evil Eye is lurking at number 6.
Yeah, but I'm saying any girl in that top 10 or top 15 can, with a big win over one of those top 5 or a big win over somebody near her in her division, can move up or down. There is a lot of lateral movement there. And that's mostly because the women's bantamweight division is still relatively new.
True. Absolutely true. What about featherweight? The next contest here is Max Holloway and Clay Collard.
Well, Blessed Holloway is putting together quite a run of late, so he's got 2 wins over Will Chope and Andre Feely, who, by the way, has maybe the worst nickname in the history of mixed martial arts. Andre Touchy Feely. Really? Did he really think that was a good idea? I know Todd Martin and I had this debate on this show, and he thought it was clever and funny and cute. I love Todd Martin, and I don't mean any disrespect, but that is a horrible nickname.
Are you reading my notes again? I have this actually written down.
Well, sorry, if I'm ghost reading your notes, I don't intend to, but whatever I'm doing, I'm agreeing with you that it's terrible, but I do think that Blessed Holloway is the kind of guy, when he puts it all together, he has the potential to be one of the best in the world. But unfortunately, the losses to Dennis Bermudez and Conor McGregor were big setbacks for him. And now it's time for the young man to go on a run. You talk about young fighters. You talked about how young Jordan Mean is. Max Holloway is pretty freaking young. He's only 22 years old.
What about the next fight? James Vick, who, I think he's underrated in my opinion. He's up against Walmir Lazaro.
How underrated can you be when you're 5-0 as a pro?
I think he's not getting the respect.
Well, that's probably because he hasn't fought for a whole year. His last fight was Ramsey Nijem.
Was that the last one?
Yeah, 1 year ago today, the UFC Fight Night where Shogun lost to Chael Sonnen.
Okay, so let's just say he wins this fight, okay? He basically cracks the top 15. I'm looking at the bottom 5 of the lightweight division, Stevie. You've got Barbosa, Khabilov, Masvidal, Pearson, and Maynard.
The only guy I think he might have a chance at out of all of those is probably Gray Maynard.
I thought you were going to say Pearson, but no, Maynard, I guess you could say that too.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him in there with Barboza, because unless he finds a way to check those leg kicks, it's not going to go any better than anybody else who faced Barboza.
Number 10 is Michael Johnson, so...
Yeah, now you talked about Murderer's Row, lightweight. That is the Murderer's Row division right there. You are not getting any easy fights in the top 15 anywhere.
And the scary thing is, Alvarez isn't even in this list yet.
Yeah. It is probably the most competitive weight class in mixed martial arts today.
Like, oh my god, like, I can't make a decision on who moves anywhere. Like, the way it is right now, it's Henderson, Melendez, and Nurmagomedov at the top 3. Okay, fine. Cerrone 4, Dos Anjos is 5. Those are your top 5 fighters with Pettis as the champion. Alvarez wins, he beats Cerrone. Cerrone goes down from 4 to, say, 5. Do you put Alvarez as the new 4 and dump everyone down once? I mean, there's so many different variables in this. I'm waiting to see what happens Saturday night with the main event.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to see if we get the chance to rank Alvarez, because no matter what, I can already tell you what I would do right now. I would probably put Alvarez in right behind, Donald Cerrone in the top 15, and I would knock Gray Maynard off the list.
Well, we'll probably speak more of this next week because, as you said, with the rankings, they have to be due, the day after the fight? Or 2 days after the fight?
Mm-hmm.
So, by Monday, you're going to vote on where Dos Anjos and Henderson is, and you might have to, you said you're expecting to have that Alvarez vote as well. So after the show, we'll see what happens. I'm curious. I'm going to check Monday like after you submit your vote, I want to see where you have him ranked. I want to see where the UFC voting panel in general has the vote. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very curious to see what happens after the main event.
I agree. But let's move on to the news.
Well, actually, before we do that, there is some other stuff on the card here. The main event on the prelims on Fox Sports 2, Neil Magny against Alex Garcia.
Okay, yeah, that should be a good fight.
And just before there's one Fight Pass fight with Wilson Reese against Joby Sanchez. The first fight on the prelims, Chris Heatherly against his return to the UFC, Ben Saunders.
The Killer Bee, former Bellator fighter, former UFC fighter, now back in UFC again.
Talked about him, coming back. And did you ever think you'd see the time when he'd be back, though? Or
I never say never to anybody coming back. I mean, you've got to accept the fact that there are so many fight cards at this point that it doesn't matter if you go to Bellator, RFA, Titan, Resurrection, whatever. Wherever you go, you're always one fight away from being called back by UFC.
Well, before we touch the news, we should talk about other shows that are happening this weekend. We won't go into too much detail, but Cage Warrior 71 is coming from Amman, Jordan. Titan FC 29 in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and RFA 17 from Sioux Falls in South Dakota. I will talk about Titan FC because there was a very interesting fight in the main card. Actually, it's a semi-main event. Mike Ricci against George Soteropoulos.
Yeah, speaking of former UFC fighters, there you go. Two of them are on this card going head-to-head with each other.
So that should be very interesting to see, and that show will be on the CBS Sports Network and CBSSportsNetwork.com. I'm not sure if I can see it up here in Canada, but for our American listeners, I'm sure you can catch that fight for sure.
You seemed kind of surprised when I told you that I thought Ricci had been cut a year ago, but we looked it up, and sure enough, he was.
I could have swore he was still with the promotion, but I guess he got didn't survive a round of cuts, I suppose.
I don't know what reason they had to keep him, to be perfectly honest with you, because he didn't win his season of The Ultimate Fighter, and he was mildly successful. He beat Colin Fletcher, and that was it. Then he lost to Miles Jury. Why would you keep him around after that?
All right, so let's start the news, and we're going to go to Sweden for this first one. UFC Fight Night in Sweden. Tickets went on sale, and cage-side seats, Stevie?
You're asking me to make a prediction?
Yep.
Sorry, tell me the card again. I'm getting texted by my wife here.
Oh, okay. Let's see what we got here. This is the UFC Fight Night 53 that's coming up in, I believe, Stockholm. Yeah, at the Ericsson Globe. And the main event is Gunnar Nelson and Rick Story.
So we're going to have to translate it from dollars to euros here.
Say dollars. The number I have here is in dollars. So
okay. I'll say 250.
265.
Wow, I was pretty damn close.
Yes, you were. Apparently there's been some complaints from the fighters about the canvas, like the ads on the canvas, and there are going to be changes upcoming to those advertisements in the cage.
What, that they're slippery, that the fighters aren't getting traction on them when they move across?
Exactly.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time, because I've seen guys slip on those logos.
And it's kind of weird, too, because you wouldn't expect that they'd be slippy. You think they would just be like embedded in the canvas. You don't think they'd actually be slippery.
I think they have to lay those over the canvas and then iron them in. I don't think they're part of the fabric itself.
That's a shame. That's just, it kind of makes sense that would happen, though, that they would fix it,
Yeah, they should just get it printed, like the entire canvas printed with the ads on it. I know that's expensive, but UFC is a money-making juggernaut. I think they can afford to do it.
Mirsad Bektik is out of his fight at UFC Fight Night 49. In his place will be Clay Collard against Max. We already talked about that fight. Why did I have that written down? Sorry.
Yeah, moving on. Moving on.
Bellator. Oh, yeah, this one. Bellator is going away from the tournament formats, and they're going to have monthly events in 2015.
I pretty much told you that when they signed Scott Coker to be the new CEO.
And that, basically, in my opinion, is the wrong thing to do. I think that is something that it takes away their uniqueness. It's sort of like using the pro wrestling example when TNA went from the six-sided ring to the four-sided ring, making them like everybody else. The tournaments in Bellator made them unique.
I respectfully both agree and disagree. I think you're right that it made them unique, but I don't think it was helping them gain any traction. I think it was fine to get Bellator off the ground to paint them as something different, but people don't care that much about tournaments anymore. It was fine to set them apart, but going forward, it's not going to make a difference for them. It's not like the early 90s of UFC where, wow, these guys could fight 3 times in one night. Well, no, they can't because commissions don't allow that. Wow, these guys will be the best fighter in the world if they win the no, they won't because usually they just lose to whoever the champion is. So why do it? Why not just make matches that are interesting with guys that have good records and let the fans choose what they want to see as opposed to forcing tournaments down their throats and making guys fight their way through to win tournaments. I mean, it was a good concept, and Bjorn Rebney took it as far as it could go, and now it's time to do something else.
Moving on to UFC, Anthony Rebel Johnson has said he wants to face the Mauler, Alexander Gustafsson. He also wants to fight Ryan Bader now, but he said he will not fight Rashad Evans.
Well, he may not get any say in that. They may choose for him.
Guess who's targeting a fall return to the UFC, Stevie?
Who?
TJ Grant.
Is he done with all his migraines and headaches and problems?
It looks that way. He's targeting a fall return, and there is rumors. I'm hearing weak rumors right now, but that might pick up some steam in a couple of weeks, that there is a show in Halifax in October.
Actually, I did see a press conference about that on the YouTube channel for UFC.
So
I don't remember whether or not TJ Grant was part of that, so I can't confirm that, but I know there was a video.
there is a video. I haven't watched it yet, but I do know that I think he's targeting a fall return to the point where there's a show in Canada, Canadian fighter. It makes sense, right? He wants to fight in his home country, and it's a perfect opportunity for the first time. UFC is going to the East Coast, which is a huge market, so why not?
Mm-hmm.
I could see that for sure. Oh, GSP did the ice bucket challenge.
Who did he challenge?
Let's see. It was Jean-Claude Van Damme. I believe it was Chuck Norris and Evgeny Bouchard, a Canadian tennis player.
Okay.
So I could see that for sure. He. I know he did Van Damme because that was. It'll be funny when Van Damme does it because I expect him to do a kick or something. So yeah, Chuck Norris, Van Damme. There you go. Okay, I did write it down properly. Yeah, so Ice Bucket Challenge. We're seeing a lot of it. Like even Vince McMahon did it, which is pretty funny. Ronda Rousey helped Steph McMahon do the Ice Bucket Challenge after SummerSlam, which was really cool. Even Steph McMahon, on her way to the ring for her match against Brie Bella, gave the Four Horsewomen signal right in front of the Four Horsewomen who are at ringside, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I will say McMahon, when she did that, she was flexing her arm, and she's got some muscle. Holy crap!
She works out.
You can definitely tell she works out. Yeah, so Colby Covington is going to be making his UFC debut soon, and he's the roommate of John Jones. So I'm looking forward to that because, I mean, if you're friends with John Jones...
Wait. What? But John Jones is the arguably number one fighter in the world and probably is getting more in endorsements than most of us put together, but he's got a roommate?
He had a roommate in college.
Oh, okay. It's like, back the truck up. John Jones should be living in his own palatial home. He didn't say he was a college roommate.
No, it's his wrestling teammate and his roommate when he was in college.
That makes a huge difference. I'm like, John Jones is way far away from having a roommate at this point. It's not like he's a prelim fighter who's training at the gym and has to split an apartment with somebody just to make rent. It's like, no, not John Jones. No way.
It's pretty cool to see more wrestlers, like top tier wrestlers, going into UFC. He's actually going to be on the prelim card for the Macau show. So, if you're watching those prelims later on in the afternoon, Steve, you check that fight out for sure. He's facing Enning Wang.
Okay.
There you go. So look forward to that. Apparently Dana White is becoming more and more of a fan of the ranking system.
Yeah, I saw the little blurb about that where he said it's something that the casual fan can easily grab onto. Like, they may not know who two guys are, but it's like college football when you see that the number 2 team is playing the number 3 team. Even if you don't know who they are, you can get interested in that.
Just for the record, so we say we've covered it, we can never talk about it again. War Machine was arrested this past week. He was out getting, is at a hotel. The cops found him with
pizza and a pile of cash.
Yeah. And apparently he was at a hotel. He was going to go home, but there was somebody waiting for him at home, apparently. Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Yeah, so he knew better than to go back there.
He's watched that show one too many times, I think.
Yeah, well, he probably didn't watch the show enough times because then he wouldn't have done what he did to Christy Mack.
Yeah.
Less said about that, the better. He's a piece of trash.
Yeah. There's one little note here. John Jones, Daniel Cormier. There's been another smack talk incident, I guess you could say. Cormier responded to John Jones' appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live and basically said, quote, "Saw Jones on Jimmy Kimmel clowning me for 4th in the Olympics. This morning I came across this little nugget, #dummy." And it's a picture of the of the John Jones, I guess it was a high school tournament. And it says, it's a picture of John Jones on the podium. I guess he finished 5th place. Or 4th place, or whatever it was, and the caption just reads, "I was in 4th place at a high school tournament."
Ooh, ow.
So this is going to be a great fight. This is going to be something, if they keep the Smack Talk going and they have the Countdown Special. I believe that's January 3rd, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, that's the pay-per-view it got moved to, the first UFC pay-per-view of 2015.
So that show, depending on the other fights that are on that card, I mean, it's not going to be a one-fight show. They actually have put some quality fights on there to really make it worth the while. I still think if it's built up properly and with a solid undercard, it can still be $1 million buy pay-per-view.
You know what? It may turn out to be the best of all things that the fight got postponed, because it would have been a great pay-per-view. It would have got a tremendous amount of money and been a huge box office success, but you know, they say anticipation makes the heart grow fonder, and you have to wait a few more months to see this fight. You are really, really going to want to see these two guys kill each other.
Oh, yeah. Oh. I mean, if you didn't see the ESPN off-camera one there, I mean, that's just, it's only going to get better.
Just type in John Jones, Daniel Cormier on any search engine, on any browser, and you're not going to get any shortage of things that you want to see.
Exactly. But that's all the news I got on my list. Stevie, is there anything in your list that I had neglected to mention?
Well, let's see. What's this that you just sent me on Skype?
Photo.
Oh, that's the 4th place photo. Good one. I like it. TCMMA. Follow him on Twitter. He's awesome.
But yeah, anything on the news there that I forgot to mention? I'm usually pretty good at that.
No, I think we've covered it all.
Now, what's on tap for Thursday night AMP?
I really can't tell you right now because I got family stuff going on, so I can't make any promises on a show.
Now, I'm sure if there is a show, SummerSlam will be mentioned.
Except Nikolai and I already did a SummerSlam recap on Sunday, so I'd be beating a dead horse.
True. But we did mention off-air the big announcement on last night's main event, the rematch, I guess, for Night of Champions. I'm sure that'll be discussed. So that's going to be the show this week. Don't forget 2 shows this weekend, and everybody go check that out. You can send a tweet to Stevie at AngryMarks, or you can send me a tweet at HardcoreCDN. Send me a message. Tell us if you have a suggestion for the show, question for the show, anything.
we love to hear it. We love the feedback from our fans, so definitely give us a tweet. And that's going to do it for Stevie J. I'm Peter H., the Hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening, and as I always say, never leave it to the judges.